take a roll call to start the meeting. Ed?
Here.
Michael?
Here.
I'm here. Steve, are you on the line? And Don. So we'll begin with the three-person quorum. And I'd ask you next to for y'all to join me in a pledge of allegiance. If we have a flag, if not, we
all know what it looks like.
Yeah, but I'm told you, unless you actually have a flag to say the pledge to, you're breaking protocol.
Do
you want a flag?
Joe?
Do you want a flag?
Yes.
Hold on.
Oh, there's Don. Don, you vote to start the meeting?
I don't know that I get the vote to it. I'm here.
Thank you. Here we go.
Here we are.
Okay, close enough. Join me in a pledge of allegiance, please.
This conference will now be recorded.
Allegiance to America, public for one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Joe, we'll move directly into your COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just state for the record that the board did not start out this evening in executive session. There was no executive session meeting, and therefore this open session constitutes the entirety of the board's meeting. With that, I'll turn it directly over to Megan Eldridge, our health director, for her update on COVID.
Hey, everybody. Hopefully this is the last COVID update of the year. Unless something drastic happens, we won't be meeting next week. So this week's update has some good news. We have gone from red to yellow. Our case counts are increasing, but our positivity rate is decreasing. So over the weekend, we had 6 new cases. So our total is up to 271. And one of those cases is in a long-term care facility. Over the last 2 weeks of this data period, we had more tests administered, and that is why our positivity rate has gone down below the 5% threshold. So over those, yes.
If I could just briefly thank Dan for bringing his flag, but another flag appeared and we said the pledge already. Thank you, Dan. There we go.
Okay, so the positivity rate is, as I said last week, it's a percentage of the positive cases that have emerged from total number of cases that were done in a 2-week period. So the last 2-week period, we had less than 1,000 cases, tests administered, and that is why our positivity rate was over 5%. And the last 2 weeks, we had more tests. We had 1,128 tests administered to Harwich residents, and 55 of those were positive, and that yields a 4.8% positivity rate. And the way the state has restructured the red, yellow, green, gray map, because we have a population over 10,000, we have to have both an incidence of 25 cases or more in a 2-week period and a positivity rate of 5%. So our incidence rate is at 26.7, which is higher than it was last week, but our positivity is lower. So that takes us out of the red zone and into the yellow. It doesn't mean that we have seen fewer cases, obviously, with the incidence up the way it's showing. We have seen cases 6 over the weekend, and more than 48 over the last 2-week period. So it's similar to last week, except for the fact that more people were tested and fewer were positive. We are still following 32 active cases in town, and that number fluctuates up and down with the rate where people recover. I'll take them off the active list, and then we get more cases and they return to the active list. So even though 6 people have recovered, 6 more have appeared in our caseload. And the cases range in age. Right now we're following a 15-year-old and a 97-year-old and everything in between. We don't have a cluster of a specific age group. It's pretty random. We are seeing lingering effects of the social gatherings from Thanksgiving. Those effects are wearing off though, and now we're seeing just general community spread with no clear transmission source. So that's still concerning. And as we focus down on the next page here with clusters, household exposure is still the #1 way of transmission for exposure of COVID-19. In the last data period, the state was showing over 40,000 cases that were confirmed as a result of household exposure. So if you look at the chart, 40,000 cases is the extreme where everything else is nowhere near it. The next highest rate for transmission is in long-term care facilities, which is just over 1,300, with the next highest in childcare at 364 cases. So we know that household exposure is our most active way of getting COVID-19. And in most case settings where I review the contact tracing, it is someone had gone to a household gathering, feeling fine, not knowing they had COVID-19, and then becoming sick a few days later, and lo and behold, the rest of the people at the gathering have come positive as well. A lot of our cases have 3 or 4 positives within the same household. We are working well with VNA to get the cases traced and contacted to try to make sure that the close contacts, those who have been exposed, have instructions on what quarantine means, not to go out, not to have people over, not to do anything that isn't explicitly essential. Going to the doctor if you're not feeling well. If you or anyone in your household is awaiting test results, you should consider yourself sick until you get those test results back. So it's very important to not assume you're okay until you get your results. You should assume you have virus if you have been tested for it and you're waiting for those results. And that goes for parents getting tested with their children in the house. We don't want those kids going to school if someone in the house has also been tested for COVID-19. That just increases the risk of spread. We have seen COVID vaccine in our hospitals and healthcare settings. It's very exciting to see a lot of our healthcare workers getting vaccinated. Our first responders are in the next round, slated for sometime in January. I've been working with the health agents as well as the county to ensure that all of the first responders who want a vaccine will get a vaccine as soon as possible. It's possible that the county will hold one large clinic for first responders, or Deirdre from the county can come to our facilities to do individual clinics as well. So we're working out the best way to get our first responders vaccinated in early January. And the public clinics are coming up in April, and it may be mid to late April, but we still are on track for getting the vaccines for the public. And same thing, we'll be working regionally and as an individual town to get the most people vaccinated as quickly as we can. depending on the number of vaccines we receive, it can range from, if it's anything like H1N1, we would receive 10 doses at a time, which isn't very conducive to holding a clinic. So we'll see how that goes. I've been told that this vaccine is shipped 100 doses minimum, so that's a good sign. And the Moderna vaccine does not need the sub-zero, the 70 below freezer. So if the Moderna vaccine comes out, we do have the capability of storing that on site if needed. Testing clinics, there's information in your packet about the testing clinics. This was available last week. This week it's in print. The Outer Cape Clinic is still pending. They were hoping to get that information up and running today with a possible clinic tomorrow. That unfortunately did not happen, but we do have 2 options that are fairly close by. The Melody Tent in Hyannis is open 7 days a week, and the Falmouth Barnstable County Fairgrounds, it's kind of the corner of Falmouth, Mashpee, Barnstable. They are open on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Outer Cape obviously is going to be a lot easier for our Harwich residents and visitors, and I will get that information out as soon as I receive it. They are looking at a 2-day-a-week clinic at the Harwich site, and details should be probably tomorrow, I would hope. But as soon as I get them, I'll distribute those details. To book an appointment, you do have to call the community testing line. You can't just show up at these places. You do need an appointment, and you need to call 508-862-5595. And you'll be screened for either a test if you have symptoms or if you're traveling and need a travel order exemption. These tests do have a fee associated with them if you are asymptomatic. So if you're symptomatic and you call your doctor and get a prescription or an order for a test, it's free. If you don't have an order or have a provider, you can contact this line and they will set you up with the test. If you're unable to pay, I've been assured that they will not turn anyone away because of the inability to pay. So if anyone is going to this and has issues with that, please contact the health department for clarification, because I've been assured that there would be either a sliding scale or some kind of accommodation for people who are unable to pay. We are coming up on one more holiday week. The next couple of weeks are typically gathering weeks with family and friends. It's going to be a different year, just like Thanksgiving was. We want to be mindful of the effects of the social gatherings. We should be 6 feet away from people who are not in your household. Open the windows if you're inside. Wear a mask if you're inside with household members, people that are not in your household. Keep it small. These gatherings affect our school system. They affect our businesses. They affect our lives. So please be aware of your actions and avoid those large activities, those large parties where your guard gets taken down a little bit. And wear your mask, wash your hands and social distance, and have a very wonderful holiday week.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions, comments for Megan?
Thank you, Megan.
As usual, good report. I keep hoping for more positive reports sometime, but it's coming.
We got a little bit of a positive today, but
exactly.
Let's keep it going.
Keep it going. Joe, back to you.
Mr. Chairman, not to build up the expectations too much, but speaking of good news, I know that the director of the Chamber of Commerce has some positive news to offer in this holiday season. So I would defer to her.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see, with my news that I'm going to give in a moment, it's nice to see Mary Anderson on this tonight so she can hear this, because this is all about the Festival of Trees fundraiser we did for the Family Pantry. It was a little different this year. Thank you to Megan for humoring me, but letting us do everything and following all of the guidelines. And then as things changed, doing it more online through email and phone calls. But I am so grateful. I always say I have the best job around, and this is a time of year where we get to give back. And it was just an amazing feeling. And everyone in our community, I want to thank, who donated either trees, items, gift cards to all of our local businesses and restaurants. The community came out in great force, bidding generously. Last year we raised almost $7,000. This year didn't quite double, but we did raise $12,500 for the Family Pantry. So I just am over the top happy with how blessed we are. We have an amazing, amazing community. So thank you to everyone who participated. And I'm just so glad that we can give back like this in a time that we need to so much. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Cindy. You're right, Joe. Good news. Cindy, thanks again. Joe, any comments, questions? Joe, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up would be the public comments and announcements. I did confirm with Caleb that no one has reached out to be recognized for public comments. And after you open it to the board, I'd like to make a public comment relative to Dr. Carpenter and some information he has to share this evening.
You wish to do that before the annual committee presentations then?
Yes, please.
Joe, I'll turn it back to you then so you can introduce Dr. Carpenter and the rest of the crew here. The school board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the members of the board, you'll see in your packet under public comments, Dr. Carpenter was able to provide some background information. And Mr. Chairman, as you know, and Selectman Ford had participated, there is a subgroup between the towns of Chatham and Harwich that have been meeting from the boards of selectmen, the town administrator, town managers, and representatives from the regional school district, as well as Dr. Carpenter and members of his team to talk about the issues that Dr. Carpenter has raised recently, which are no surprise to anybody relative to enrollment and impacts on the school district. In light of the fact that Dr. Carpenter is presenting to the Chatham Board of Selectmen tomorrow evening and is scheduled to come back before this board on January 4th, Scott was good enough to be able to come in this evening just to provide some high-level comments. This is not put on the agenda or noticed for discussion or any vote. Again, that will occur on Monday, January 4th. But with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize Dr. Carpenter for a brief update and comment on the situation.
Please, go ahead.
Joe, thanks for the introduction. So I'm Scott Carpenter. I'm the superintendent at Monomoy Regional. I just wanted to, have a chance to just make a few comments before the board. The awkwardness in being a regional school superintendent, you're always trying to make sure that you're sharing the same information with both towns and both boards of selectmen. So tomorrow night I will be doing a presentation that I shared before our school committee just a couple weeks ago that really was meant to catalyze and focus on two of the school committee goals for this year. One of the school committee goals this year is to establish a working group and hold a meeting early in the budget process to discuss the regional agreement at the elementary level. And that's what this working group has been. The reason to have these conversations is that for the last 2 decades on Cape Cod, we have seen a gradual reduction in young families and therefore school-age children. And it's not just in Harwich and it's not just in Chatham, it's happening across the Cape. I think one of the things that was unforeseen as the district regionalized is that the loss of school-age children in Chatham is happening at a faster rate than it is happening in Harwich. So both towns are losing school-age children, but Chatham is just losing them more quickly. So that when we started the region and came together, we had 6 sections of kindergarten at Harwich Elementary School and 3 sections of kindergarten at Chatham Elementary School, and they were all full classrooms. And we now are, almost 10 years later, and we see 1 classroom of kindergartners at Chatham Elementary School, heavily subsidized by school choice enrollment from Harwich. And we see 5 sections of kindergarten at Harwich Elementary School. So both towns are seeing a loss of school-age children. But the challenge that you have, you could call this sort of an economies of scale challenge, is to run an elementary school, you have, or to run any school, you have fixed costs. And as your enrollment gets smaller and smaller and smaller, those fixed costs get spread out across a smaller group of students. So we're seeing the per pupil expenditures at Chatham Elementary School start to get significantly higher than the per pupil expenditures at Harwich Elementary School. And it's not that we're doing anything different. It's the same educational program. The students in both buildings are getting the same high quality elementary education. But I was just raising an awareness with our school committee starting last spring and with the boards of selectmen that there's a growing inequity that we ideally need to find a way to equalize. The challenge is we have a regional agreement, and we have to open up the regional agreement and look at how do we go about that. So hence the working group and a lot of conversations yet to come. There's also a second, we'll call it a parallel school committee goal, which is to establish, organize, and lead a visioning session and community forum to discuss with stakeholders what sort of elementary developmental learning program would be ideal looking forward for Monomoy. And again, if you think about at Chatham Elementary School, having only 1 section of kindergarten means that if we look forward over the next 4 years, 4 years out, we'll be having 1 section of 4th grade, 1 of 3rd, 1 of 2nd, 1 of 1st, 1 of kindergarten. And then it begs the question: is that good for children? So we want to look at what sort of educational program might we want to look at for our elementary students. And again, we did a survey 3 years ago surveying families. After my school committee presentation, we resurveyed our families at the elementary level and our future elementary families to go get some input from them on what they would like to see. So there's those results are in the packet of information that was shared before you. But I'll be speaking tomorrow night before the Chatham Selectmen with sort of a full-blown presentation that's based on the 8-page report that I shared with our school committee that you have in your packet that has 17 pages of appendices, that has it has enrollments and class sizes over the years at the two buildings. It pretty much has everything you'd ever want to know about the 2 elementary schools, all in one 25-page document with 8 pages of text and lots of appendices. But as Joe said, I will come back at the start of the new year to your selectmen's meeting and share with you the same presentation that I'll be providing in Chatham, and would be happy to go and answer any and all of your questions at that time.
Thank you, Scott. I certainly want to thank you and your team for putting together such a detailed report and recognizing some issues that we're working together with Chatham to solve. So my hats off to the great effort and the information. Are there any comments? As Scott says, and since this is not on the agenda, I don't really want to debate tonight. There's a huge packet, though, that we prepared a informed discussion for Scott and Joe. We're talking January 4, rather.
Correct.
And so this gives you a preview and some time to prepare for that discussion.
Larry, it's Don.
Yes.
Might I suggest that it is inappropriate to actually ask for any comments? It's not on the agenda. It was just a presentation, and we have the opportunity when he does get agenda to make comments or questions.
That was, yeah, I think that was my point. It'll come back when January 4th.
No, you just asked if anybody had any questions or comments.
Okay, sorry.
Larry, the only question I have, and it's not a question, but I think as you prepare this next agenda item, it would be nice if you shared with the public and the rest of the board, the subcommittee, who they are and when they've met and what content, because this is tonight, other than the one meeting that Stephen Ford had with, I believe it was Don, with the school last year. I'm not aware of a subcommittee meeting with anybody as a board member, let alone the public.
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael, because we've had, Stephen's been part of that subcommittee, I think, Joe, and Chris, several, 6 weeks maybe? And he did report back to us a couple times. My role in that is as a backup to Steve. And so I've been there only when Steve has not been able to make it.
All right, just like I said, if you could just tell us, because if Stephen's reported back to us in the last 6 weeks, I missed something.
Okay, I refer to the minutes, but I was confident that he reported back at least once on the discussions. But I'll double check that, Michael. Okay, thank you, Dr. Carpenter, and we'll move then next to the annual committee presentations. First on the docket is Brooks Academy Museum. And I see Dave Spitz. Dave, are you going to lead this charge?
I am. Good evening, everyone. Since I get to follow a report on our pandemic and a major school restructuring, I'm not going to let you drop the temperature too much since we are proposing a very expensive project. I've been asked to report on our committee in that we have a full membership. Our attendance at meetings has been very good. As of this afternoon, our minutes are up to date, and we're almost up to date in terms of our ethics testing. With that said, I have submitted to you a report indicating what we've been doing lately. 2 years ago, we, with an architect's report, intended to do an elevator for accessibility, to relocate the entrance and to create additional basement storage. It was a very optimistic project, including the architect telling us that his visual inspection indicated that the building was in good shape. CPC, to its credit, said, "Are you sure?" And they directed us, even though they did give us over $100,000, they directed us to first begin with the structural analysis. Took a while to get that going, but the structural analysis began this summer. We have a very reputable firm. They're called Structures North, which means they're not from Cape Cod, but they do a lot of work on Cape Cod. They did their work quickly. They did a visual inspection. They determined, yes, the building is in good shape, but the foundation needs work. I asked the fellow if he was talking about $20,000 or $2 million. I think his original estimate was $200,000, but even that turned out to be low. He worked very well with us. He met with Griffin Ryder and Sean Libby, in addition to myself. He provided a report quickly. He also got a contractor that he works with on other Cape Cod projects to do a cost estimate, which allowed us to submit a request for funding to CPC. Now, I know this is just a committee report, so I don't know how much detail you want me to get into this evening. We have applied to CPC for the structural foundation work. That work will be done by supporting the building and pouring a 4-foot concrete foundation for all of the older sections of the building, which is where there's currently stone and bricks and nothing more. And that is seen as necessary to keep this very important building in decent condition. That is the minimum. That'll cost $500,000. It's been the unanimous feeling of everyone, staff and boards that I've been working with to this point that while the building is supported, now would be the time to go down not 4 feet, but with 8-foot walls to excavate to create additional basement and storage area. And that's what I've proposed to the CPC. Just as far as, I think the structural engineer's report, his work has been spot on. He's done some very good analysis. He's also given us a building report, which is now on the town website, for issues throughout the building that need to be addressed. But the thing we really need to be talking about is the foundation for at least the next year, and we need to address that, and hopefully we'll create some basement storage at the same time. The cost estimate was done quickly. I urged the structural engineer to come up with some costs to allow us to apply to CPC. We did better than simply taking multipliers out of a construction manual. We got someone with hands-on experience with this type of work to give us the cost estimate. However, it was done quickly. So to really know where we stand with these costs, at some point we're going to have to look more carefully. But for now, we have some very good information to hopefully get a CPC approval and also to apply for state grants. I've identified two principal, with the help of Sarah Corrigan at Cape Cod Commission, I've identified two very positive grant opportunities at the state level. One is in the area of cultural. That grant is due January 15th, and our application is well underway. And also a historic grant. If we're successful with both of those grants, we could conceivably be getting in the range of $300,000. We've got letters of support from a number of organizations and boards around town. I do feel I need to get some support either from this board.
Dave, I've lost you temporarily.
You seem to have frozen.
Am I back now?
You're back now.
Okay. Hopefully I didn't cut out too much before my
We
final
were just
comment.
talking about the support from the boards for the grant applications. In that regard, can you work with Joel and staff to draft a supporting letter that we could consider as an agenda item?
Yes, I can. I've been getting a lot of help, both from Joe and from the town engineer and several other departments to put this together. So we are moving forward quickly, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
There's questions for Dave. Dave, I think you went over it rather quickly. Did you end up adding an elevator or not?
Not at this time. We're just doing the basics right now. What's happening is the structural engineer has provided for where the elevator can be. There's a pit involved, and something in the structure needs to accommodate that. So that is part of his plans, but nothing more than that at this point in time.
Okay. And how's the relationship with the station right now, but the bird house, the barn. The barn, yeah.
Well, the crow barn is still standing.
The crow barn, I'm sorry.
Despite the tornado. This project will not affect that in any way.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Larry?
Yes. Ed?
You know, this, the way Dave presented it, first looking at just providing a minimal foundation and then taking the opportunity to expand it to a full basement was a decision when across the street at the former school building, which is now being utilized by the Cape Cod Theater Company. When that foundation was found to be failing and needing to be replaced, originally it was proposed to just put in the 4-foot deep foundation wall. When it went out to bid, the bids came in such that the decision was made to expand the project to include a full basement while they were in the process of doing that, because the added cost did not seem exorbitant for the benefit that would be realized.
Thank you, Ed. Other comments, questions? Dave, just one final. In terms of timing, you expect to have the refined estimates in time for town meeting then?
Yeah, I think we should do that. We won't have it in time to submit our first grant application, but we've got enough information. I mean, it's pretty good information, but if it's 20% off, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think we have one other question.
Other question, Dave.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we know what the cost difference is for a 4-foot foundation versus an 8-foot?
Yes, that's in the, I'm not going to go through the numbers tonight, but we do have all of that in the report.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Others? Thanks again, Dave. And,
okay, thank you very much.
We'll move next to the Brooks Free Library Board of Trustees. And I see several members there.
Hi.
You're going to start this and get us going?
Well, I'm Joanne Brown, and I'm the chair of the Brooks Free Libraries Board of Trustees. You have the report that we gave to you in your packets, and I'm not going to go over it word by word because I think
it's a very detailed report.
Yes, it's a very detailed report, as always. What I want to say is we all know that this has been a difficult year, and all of the trustees are delighted with the outstanding way that Jenny Hewitt and her staff have continued to serve the town of Harwich. From the many online programs to no-contact curbside pickup, they continue to offer library service in a safe and effective manner. They keep the website current and are available by phone. Please look at the website for lots of information about different activities. Finally, we'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to the Friends of the Brooks Free Library and all that they do to support the library. We're all also very appreciative of the Friends and our volunteers. This has been a difficult year for the Friends and volunteers as both operations have been completely shut down by the pandemic. We look forward very much to the Friends book sale, Sunday programs, and other activities resuming at some point in 2021, as well as welcoming back our wonderful volunteers. And that's,
thank you, Dylan.
And you'll see that Bernadette Waystack, Joan McCarty, and Bill Kroll are here, as well as Library Director Jenny Hewitt. And I don't see any other names.
Okay.
So,
yeah, outstanding as well. Do any of you wish to make a comment as well? I have one question. Probably, Jenny, you may be to answer this. Do you see a rise in online use when the library is closed? Does it sort of balance out?
Yeah. Throughout the pandemic, there's been a huge increase in the use of online resources. So I don't think it dipped any when we were open for some inside browsing and curbside this fall. I think it's just continuing to grow as it always has, but more of a demand now when people are trying to stay home more and not going out. So it's really hard to keep up with the demand on that. Just the way that the publishers put restrictions on things. And it costs us a lot more for every ebook that we buy is probably 3 times more expensive than it would cost you as a consumer to buy. So publishers like that because they want you to go out and buy the ebook. But anyway, yes, a lot of increase in online use. We have streaming video through Hoopla and audiobooks and ebooks through that as well. And I know one thing that's been very popular is the Cape Cod Times digital edition, which is free for anyone using their library card can read the paper just as if it appears in print. So, yep, lots of online use and a lot of people placing their requests online, for curbside pickup, which is great and keeps us very busy. But we'd also like to really encourage people who can't place requests online or who don't have a particular title in mind to call us so that we can suggest things and put together a bundle of items for them to check out.
Thank you, Jenny. Ed, did you have a comment?
No, I just was pointing out that Linda Cibula was also present.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't see Linda. She's right in the center of my screen. Sorry about that, Linda. Okay, no other comments?
Don has a question.
Don?
Yeah, it's not so much of a question, but people aren't necessarily focused entirely on the library with all the travails that have happened over this past year. I'm sure the rest of the board joins me in saying that to the trustees, to Ginny, to all of the staff, you've done a remarkable job trying to go with the flow, keep everybody safe, and still have a library. So my hat's off to you. You've done a wonderful job.
Say thank you very much. It has been a very trying year because usually any kind of obstacle that comes up, we're all about how do we provide as much service as we can for as long as we can. And this is like totally turned that on its head. It's invisible, you can't see it. And so it's very hard to know, when you reach the threshold where you should stop inside access or, it's tough. We're librarians and we read. So there's all kinds of studies and conflicting advice on different things. So it's been kind of a very challenging year. But
you've invented and you've reinvented and you've reinvented. That's an amazing thing on the fly.
I agree, Don. Thank you. Anyone else? Joanne, thanks again for your report. And we'll move on to the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have Chairman Gary Carrera on the line at this point. I would suggest that we could postpone to a future meeting.
We can do that. I see we have Dan on the line, but we need the chair of the committee as well. Dan, will you we'll work with the chair to reschedule as Mr. Powers has suggested?
Dan was the one that asked me to convey that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I met with Gary today. I know he was intending to be on, so I'm trying to get a hold of him. Not sure what's going on, so.
I'm happy, Dan.
Hey, Gary is probably still at work delivering packages for the season.
Santa wears brown, so.
Yeah.
Joe, if it's okay, we'll move on, and if he shows up, we can bring him in later. If not, we'll reschedule to another time.
Very good, thank you.
Next on the agenda is the public hearing for the 2022 capital outlay budget. So I'll open the public hearing at this point.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that this is merely a presentation. The charter requires a joint meeting, public meeting, so we have it as a presentation, not a public hearing. The public hearing was held through Finance Committee. And it would be appropriate to recognize Finance Committee Chair John Chory, so he could call his committee to order. And then I would look to somebody from Capital Outlay, as Chairman Rich Larios is unable to participate tonight.
Okay, John, I'll let you call your committee to order.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Larry, and thank you, Joe. My name is John Chory, Chairman of the Finance Committee. We do have a quorum present. I believe I should do a roll call vote, Larry, is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, if I could do that, when I call your name, if you can just signify you're here. Is Angelo Lamonte?
Here.
Dan Torak?
Here.
Mark Emrys?
Here.
Dale Kennedy?
Here.
That's 5 members. We need a quorum of 4, so we have a quorum present. And I just want to acknowledge Mary Anderson. She's recently been appointed to our committee. She hasn't been sworn in yet, and the details there, so she'll just be listening in. And but we welcome to the committee, Mary, and judging by the folks that have commented on you tonight, I think you're very well known in the community. So welcome, and thank you for being part of this community committee. Okay, Larry?
Thank you, John. Yeah, is there someone from the Capital Outlay Committee then that can...
Bruce Nightingale is here. I'm not sure who else is on my committee is here. Angelo is here.
Noreen's here.
Oh, there you are. Noreen is here. So there's 3 of us.
Joe is here.
Pardon?
Joe is here.
So Joe's here. Well, you need 4 for a quorum?
Yeah, we only have a committee of 5. So we have a quorum.
So you want to go ahead and take a roll call vote for a quorum?
Bruce Nightingale here.
Noreen is here.
Angelo has dual quorum.
I'm here.
Thank you.
There.
John, aren't you on also?
What was the comment, please?
John, aren't you also represented on the Capital Outlay Committee from the Finance Committee?
I guess I haven't been physically, designated yet, but yes, I'm here.
Okay, so that gives you a quorum. I think we can move ahead. Joe, you wish to go through the draft?
I do, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the chairman and members of both Finance Committee and Capital Outlay. And as you'll see in the packet, you have, to be quite frank about it, you have half of the equation. What you have is the proposed budget for fiscal year 22. And Mr. Chairman, at the conclusion of the discussion, I'd be asking that the matter be held over to another meeting so that I can incorporate the full capital plan as required by charter. I was unable to get all of that together, but I will advise everybody that the Capital Outlay Committee met on December 11th to review the plan at that time and transmit it to the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee held their public hearing on December 15th with full notice as required. So what was presented in your packet is now somewhat stale dated. And I'll explain some of the changes and share my screen to do that. But to the chairman and members of the Board of Selectmen, I first want to start with the bottom line, which is what you will see in my memo and is reflected on the 3rd page of the document. And that is that we're looking at a roughly $20 million capital plan for fiscal year 2022. And there are any number of different funding sources that you've seen year over year. Be that Chapter 90, community preservation, golf grants, and retained earnings. However, this evening, the story really is of the 20 million plus, there's approximately 3.4 million in potential projects that are either funded through free cash, the operating budget, or are still unclassified. And so really that is the last remaining hurdle to get past. As I put in my memorandum to the board, this capital outlay plan also has 4 items that at present are identified as potential debt exclusions. And I put that out there because I know it runs contrary at present to the selectmen's instructions to reduce or avoid overrides and debt exclusions. Mr. Chairman, if you think it helpful, I can go through the plan. Like I said, I'll share my screen in a moment, but I can walk through it, or I can identify some of the items that when I presented or submitted the report were listed as requiring more information. So whichever you prefer.
Let's spend a little time on this, Joe, and go through the report.
Sure. So I'm going to do a screen share, and hopefully that will work. And of course, it's not yet. So, Mr. Chairman, hopefully you can all see that on the screen. And well, what you're looking at is first under administration. The things I would highlight are right at the very top, you can see Harwich Center ADA sidewalk project, $50,000 under free cash. And there was a reference to sidewalk ADA community development block grant. And I just wanted to advise the selectmen, this was a carryover from my predecessor. It's my understanding that there is no activity underway at present to acquire the grant, nor is there anything really relative to that other than the efforts of staff and selectmen to acquire a shared streets grant that could replace this project. Then progressing down, you can see the references to the walkway reconstruction, Route 28, Saquatucket to Harwich Port. There's an amount of $200,000 with the hope of an offsetting grant of $400,000. As the members of the board will remember, there was a presentation fairly recently by our town engineer, given that the state, through Department of Transportation, appears to be looking more favorably towards these kind of projects. And as you recall from that presentation, we do expect to hear from a state board that relates to that project sometime in January. So we've kept those on there. Again, $200,000 is presently earmarked. That's the town's portion of it related to a potential grant of $400,000. I will advise the board that it's my understanding through the finance director that there had been a previous appropriation of $250,000 related to this type of project. However, that was turned back by the DPW director in fiscal year 21, because at that point, there really was no sense that the state was on board with that. And so that money was returned back to offset the budget deficit in fiscal year 21. The next item you'll see is a reference to an operating budget expense of $30,000 regarding the green or fuel efficient fleet replacement schedule. At this point, I haven't been able to find that schedule, and I do not expect that item to be going forward. The remainder of what you see under administration relate to present applications that are currently pending before the Community Preservation Committee. You can see the project that David Spitz spoke about earlier this evening regarding the structural improvements projects at Brooks Academy. There is a request from the Real Estate and Open Space for Hinckley's Pond Watershed Preservation Project, and 2 for the Bikeways Committee regarding Depot Road South and a Chatham-Harwich Town Border Marker Project. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to stop there to take questions or continue?
Yeah,
on?
why don't you do one section at a time? Joe, can you expand the bikeways crossing? Well, no, that was okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, if I can, Mr. Chairman, part of the reason why you'll see those under administration, in working with the Community Preservation Committee, and I'm sure this is an offshoot from projects that went forward last year, the Community Preservation Committee was looking for the town, if you will, to be the lead applicant. In light of that, I did send a memorandum to Chairman David Nixon and the committee, indicating that I would be inserted as the town applicant to satisfy the requirements of CPC. However, that was not to be inferred as the Board of Selectmen or the town endorsing the projects. That will be a separate process. But these 4 items are under administration because they did not have a natural falling place necessarily within other departments, or other departments were not sponsoring them. So that's why you'll see those projects in particular coming under administration.
Thank you, Joe. If no other questions, we'll move on then. Yes.
Larry, this is Michael.
Michael?
Joe, can you expand on the sidewalk 200,000 for a minute? I believe that in our conversation, we talked about that being 3 to 4 years out.
So I agree with that. It was placeholder carryover, and there was some discussion amongst the Capital Outlay Committee. We're not really sure, based on the changes to the charter, if the committee has the authority to remove these items. That's why they remain for presentation tonight.
Okay.
You know, they were originally submitted, they were originally part of the plan, and as much as I could, I did not want to remove or impact upon those projects prior to this presentation. You'll see throughout the plan, there's some other notations in that regard.
Okay, and then the fuel efficient vehicles, that was not voted by the board. I believe that went away. And Don, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that Chris had placed 10 years worth of replacement vehicles, and the board decided that they needed a lot more information to proceed with that. So that's another one that I don't think really needs to be on there, but.
That's how I remember it.
And then I guess, Larry, just to the entire presentation, as we scroll through this, depending on how much time you want to spend on this, I mean, here's the first part of the presentation, and there's a couple things in there already. And at the beginning of this presentation, Joe said that he was going to be back to us within a week or two with the expanded version of this. I don't know how much time we want to spend on something that's not accurate.
And that's a good point. I would like us to, and I'll take that, Michael. I would like us to comment on our review if there is any questions we have from the board. I know we brought up a couple. There's a green one, green replacement vehicles. I know, Joel, I had a question later on the work on Sand Pond, because I don't think anyone's made I don't think there's been a decision to move ahead on that, for instance. And so there seems to be there are some draft items, we've already mentioned a couple, that need to be further explored further.
And Larry, if I may, just one more comment. You know, as we navigate through this, I thought Joe's memo was an excellent memo in pointing out promises that we've made and where some of this money is going to come from. And $574,000 off the top on free cash to replace what we took out of stabilization. There's also no mention, and maybe I'm wrong, Joe, maybe it's someplace else, but an OPEB contribution this year, which we also set a priority on, and we had been doing 500,000. But given that we're going to be taking things out of this, maybe we should look at a larger picture of this later, Larry.
Yeah, I would agree.
Larry?
Yes.
It's Tom. Yeah, I'm listening to Michael and listening to Joe. I mean, I had a hand in writing that charter change. I've said this before, and it may be something that we'd want to talk about in between the meeting, but if ever there was a time to sequence these things, because the plan that we're developing this year is analogous to what was going on 10 years ago. It's a sequence plan where you're only adding 1 year to the previous years, the 6 years that you'd already agreed to. If ever there was a year where you would have the opportunity to be able to lock that in, it would seem to me to be this year, because last year's was not the capital plan, it was a capital budget. It wasn't locked in. It was every year for the last 5 years, as I can remember, it got resequenced, and it was basically, it was great that it showed years, but they were meaningless, because the next year you could come in and see something that was in year 4, and all of a sudden it was now happening this year. That's going away, and it's going to be 1 through 6 you inherit, and 7 you add. So, I mean, this may be the year for you to make those adjustments and take out things that were somewhat bogus or really never were realized, and create a real sequence.
Joe, let me, if I may, Joe, let me turn this back to you. My question is, there seems to be, I know Don's described some of the action that was taken in the recent charter change. Based on your statement, that seems to be a bit of a hurdle to understand what we can take out, what we can leave in, and stay consistent with the current charter. Does that need some further work so that we feel comfortable moving forward?
Well, you may recall, I said at an earlier meeting that I was hoping that and I'm probably saying the name wrong, even though I'm a past chair, I believe it's the Bylaw Charter Review Committee. You know, there are going to be some potential articles on town meeting that relate to either bylaw or charter. And I think it's necessary to have that group pick up where the last article was on this, because there is confusion, I think, in the language that was originally intended to come before the town, what was voted by the town, and quite frankly, an interpretation of what was meant. So to me, that runs parallel to what needs to occur as we build the warrant for the 2021 annual town meeting and continue to refine both capital and operating budgets. And if I could, Selectman McCaskill is absolutely right. I have in the fixed costs, the OPEB amount. I didn't put it on capital, but I think the point is that could come to bear on free cash as well. And that has also been factored in, even though it wasn't reflected on the memo. So that is still out there and still understood to be a requirement to follow up on.
And Larry, Joe's right. I don't want to be misconstrued here. In order for us to segue into the new charter language, he's approaching it in a conservative way, and I think he's right to do that until we get some more clarity about it. But I'm just saying that it may not shake out that it's as cumbersome as we're looking at it tonight.
No, I think that becomes obvious. I'm just trying to figure out how we clarify this so we can move ahead. You know, it sounds like Joe has given some thought on some charter edits, if you will, to clarify it, and be, as both you and Michael have inferred, be conservative in our look at it this year, both from a charter aspect and from protecting our free cash and meeting our obligations for stabilization and for other expenses. So unless there's other comments, Joe, I guess I'll leave it to you to come back in a discussion on both these main themes.
Certainly, if I...
No, I have a correction.
We have a couple. Noreen has her hand up, and we have, you guys are small postage stamps right now, but Noreen, I'll move to you.
I think Bruce was ahead of me. I'll wait for Bruce.
Yeah, I have a correction, Joe.
Yep.
On page 2, under Allen's Harbor jetty, that number needs to be 2 million, not 200,000.
Thank you, Bruce. I think that's since been updated. I was made aware of that error the other day, so I do have that on the one that I'm sharing, and that was corrected. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Noreen?
Thank you, Larry. I just wanted to go back to Dawn's comments for a second. When we met a few weeks ago, we went the complete opposite tack, as you can figure out from seeing this from what Dawn said. We took last year, we didn't get into the details of it, but since the plan was presented after the vote, we took this year as already being locked in. So that's why it's such, you're absolutely right. We need clarification. If this isn't locked in yet, then we can do a lot of things. But as it is right now, the votes we took a couple of weeks ago to delete things even and correct things, they're still on the plan because it was pointed out we can't really change anything of our own authority. So we do need direction.
Joe, we'll put this back and we'll look. It sounds like with third item, that's procedurally. What do we do to delete something? Let's go back to town meeting, clarification, procedural, and how we and look at overall budget.
Sure, and I think the value tonight in having the three financial committees that are here, being Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Capital Outlay, is that we're able to convey what I'm trying to show here on the screen of that bottom line of, even though you've got projects that are funded, you know, there's a significant amount of 3.4 million that it's going to impact on free cash, operating budget, or is presently unclassified. And that's really the message that I want to get out this evening, that we have capital needs and projects, but we're still up against the headwinds of tough budget times. And that number has to come down from where it is because we have so many other obligations. So I can take direction from this in the way that it's been presented thus far. And I think I can say that we've all met our obligations under the charter as well, presently.
Thank you, Joe. Other comments? Michael?
Yeah, just one more comment. As you know, looking at our conversation, and I know we have a lot more coming up about wastewater, based on Dan Pelletier's presentation, it seems that the board is leaning away from, until we get further facts and science on East Harwich, that we're leaning away from the $8.4 million debt exclusion that's on this capital plan. And I only say that because I think it's important, as we had that memo in the packet tonight, and we're talking about contradictions to our budget message. I think that with what we've been discussing, it doesn't seem that we're bringing forward East Harwich this year. So I think that that's to further the conversation, but based on the report from Dan, it didn't seem like we're ready to do East Harwich, even if we want to do East Harwich.
That may be, but that will merit further discussion to make a final decision, as you know. Yes.
I'm sorry. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Just one more thing on the bylaw change and how to present it so we can go forward. You know, the answer to everything is to add another column with more information. But just a quick suggestion, as I was wrestling with this since our last meeting, perhaps we need one more column just to operate with for this year, so we can have a column that says what we actually want to vote on for a capital plan, and then leave the existing one till we figure out how to get from the stated capital plan through the committees involved and the town meeting to the town meeting vote, if that made any sense.
No, it does. That kind of answers the procedural aspect of how we move ahead while we're sorting the other parts out, I think.
At least we can discuss what we want to do and not disrupt the bylaw.
Yes.
Larry, if you do it that way, to Noreen's point, to everybody else that's made a comment tonight, if you do it that way, it actually expedites a solution, because if you can do this wholesale, it takes a 2/3 vote to change the capital plan, but you could just present it as an overall revamp. So this is what the roadmap is that we really intend to use going forward. So identifying it in that manner would be extremely helpful, because you'd be able to just do an ombudsman kind of thing where you're electing to make the wholesale change by 2/3 vote.
Agreed. Other comments? Joe?
No, Mr. Chairman, I get a sense of where we're at right now. The last thing I would say is just procedurally that both Finance Committee and Capital Outlay should then vote to adjourn to conclude their public meetings, as this was the only topic.
And I shall let you do that. John, you wish to follow that recommendation?
Before I do that, I would have liked to have heard the presentation, not only for myself, but we have a lot of people on the call here, from public officials to hear the plan. And to postpone it, I understand from listening to different folks here, I understand the reason to that. But sensing that, I'll make, should someone make a motion to close the public hearing from our committee procedurally?
Yes, and then take a vote.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second it.
I'll second that.
Take a quick roll call.
The motion's been presented to adjourn the public hearing from the Finance Committee on the capital budget. Angelo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dale?
Yes.
And myself, yes also. So it's 5-0 to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, thank you for joining us, and we will, of course, bring this back, as Jill said.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, John. Thank you, members of the Finance Committee. Is there a motion from Capital Outlay to adjourn?
Bruce? You're muted.
Yep.
You're mute.
Motion for the Capital Outlay Committee to adjourn.
Second.
Take a quick roll call vote.
Noreen says yes.
Ms. Nightingale calls yes.
Angelo says yes.
And that's sufficient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Capital Outlay.
Hey, Larry,
Yes, Michael.
can I suggest that, at the beginning and listening to John Chory's comment before he made the motion about the people that are on the call, can I suggest that Joe at the beginning of his presentation said that we didn't have the whole picture, we had most of it, and that he would have the rest of the picture within a week, maybe two, I'm not sure what he said, but can we invite the same group back when we have the whole picture and do the presentation, and maybe in a sequence where the board clarifies some of the things that are on the plan that shouldn't be on the plan, at least in their mind, so that as we have a presentation, we can get the input from finance and capital outlay. I know this meeting was charter driven, but I would like to invite the same group back when we have all the information.
Yep, I agree. Let me ask a related question. Will the your capital outlay committee, will you meet in the near future before this comes back?
So, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned to Rich Larios that I would follow up after this discussion tonight. So Rich and I can touch base tomorrow and we'll have a better answer on that.
Okay.
He was unable to participate tonight.
Larry?
Okay. Yes, Noreen?
But even if we didn't meet, we actually discussed every project. I mean, we know what our intentions were. It was only the restrictions of the bylaw that kept us from having Joe delete, add, move, and express those intentions. So we really don't have, unless Joe has more information to bring back to us, we covered the plan to up to date. Just doesn't show.
Thank you, Lorraine. The reason I ask that is to follow Michael's comment. I agree with bringing back. It would be good to have your input into that next, Joel, your table before we bring it back as a discussion, I think.
And there was one item that came up after capital outlay, was related to the town well fields and the protection of the drinking water. So it is something that was on the plan that would have to go before capital for consideration if in fact it can be added. But given the nature of the topic, I didn't want to be the one to say I did not want to consider the safety of our public drinking water.
Okay. I think we've covered this enough then, and thank you all. We'll bring this back then when it's appropriate. Moving next is consent agenda. Michael, you want to address this?
Yes, let me just get the agenda back up. All right, I vote that we move the consent agenda as follows. A, approve the Caleb Chase request in the amount of $1,000. And B, vote to approve the appointment of Elizabeth Harder to the Community Preservation Committee.
With a term to expire June 30th, 21.
Yes.
Thank you, Don. And that's a second as well, Don?
Yes, it is.
Discussion? I'll take a roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you, Michael. New business. The first item A is discussion. There's some activity along this theme of naming the Route 137 bridge. They have the Hidden Wounds Memorial Bridge. I'd ask, we have John Dixon on the line, and we have Pat Johnson, who've been, and we might have Rob here as well. I don't see his name now, but Pat or John, which one will wish to start this discussion?
John, go for it. Okay, I was going to defer to Pat, but I welcome everybody, or hi everybody, I should say. I'm not welcoming anyone. I'm the guest, but this came from a project we do every year called Project Citizen, where the 8th grade civics classes take on an issue and try to get a public policy adopted. So one of my classes last year took on the issue of veterans issues, and ended up advocating for a policy of naming a bridge to honor those veterans who have suffered from PTSD, TBI, and other ailments that are sometimes grouped together and called hidden wounds. And so the proposal, which was made through a bill sponsored in the legislature by Representative Peake and Representative Whalen, was to rename the bridge over Route 6 on 137 the Hidden Wounds Memorial Bridge. And Pat can be more up to date as to where's the process, but as I understand it, it has passed the House and it is pending the third reading in the Senate. And Senator Sears' office wanted the boards to be informed of it, and I think would like the board's blessing to make sure that the board supported this concept. And this is pending in the current term, which expires January 5th, as I understand. And I do have one student on, Abigail Gates, who is one of the members of the class that I know she was having technical issues earlier, so I'm not sure she'll be able to answer, but I know she's on the call, so I wanted to acknowledge her.
I see her on, and she looked like she was getting a mic ready at one time. Let me go to the path, and we'll see if we can get Abigail on the.
If she wants to unmute, she just has to hit 6 on the phone.
Pardon? Oh, mute 6, yeah, could be. Pat, it seems as though we're kind of latecomers to this process. John, when did you start this then?
It started, the students made their presentations last May and June. I think the bill was introduced in May. And honestly, we could have, in retrospect, perhaps should have informed the board of this bill and our intention, but it did not come up as something on our to-do list until it was raised by Senator Sears' office this month.
Okay. Pat, you wish to comment from Senator Sears and your perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, John. I think John pretty much nailed it. The bill passed the House on December 3rd. It's currently in the Senate Committee on Bills in third reading. For it to pass the session, needs to pass by midnight on January 5th. Otherwise, the session starts over again January 6th. The bill would need to be refiled from scratch, go back to first committee, et cetera.
would take another year at least. So, Senator Sear basically, as John indicated, wanted the board to know about it. Hopefully have the board's blessing. We don't need a formal vote or anything, but would be happy to take that if the board wanted to do a vote or send a letter of some kind in support. But essentially, he just wanted the board to make sure the board's good with it before we push to get it to pass the Senate at some point next 2 weeks before the session ends on January 5th. And it's House Bill 4761. I think an email with details and the link to the bill is in your packet via John, I believe. That's it for me.
Thank you, Pat. Abigail, can you unmute and say and comment?
Looks like she is on.
Maybe not. Well,
I see she's trying there, but I think she indicated me by email she was having technical problems. So
okay. Well, it happens to us all.
Yeah.
Ed, you had a comment?
Well, I find this an interesting proposal, recognizing the hidden wounds of the veterans. And for me, what's interesting about it, many years ago, there was no recognition for Vietnam veterans of the injuries they suffered through Agent Orange. But it was actually a number of people who live here in town working with Senator Kerry's office that got that recognition through. And I think it's only right that we as a community recognize the post-traumatic stress syndrome wounds that many of our current veterans are suffering from now. And with that, I'd like to move that we send a letter to the Senator Sear supporting the passage of the bill and the designation of the Route 137 overpass as the Hidden Wounds Memorial Bridge.
Second.
Other discussion? Could I pass the buck a bit and John or Pat, could you draft a letter that would help us get the details right? And email it to Joel and then we can...
Would be happy to. Be happy to, absolutely.
Larry, in discussion, I just want to point out that this couldn't be a better placed monument to the folks who have had the hidden wounds, because it's an overpass over the Grand Army of the Republic highway.
Good point. Yep. Any other comment? Michael, were you starting to say something?
No, I'd just say great job to all involved, and he was recognized in the packet, but Rob Mador, who was instrumental on the one on 124 as well.
Yeah. That was, I agree. I think, John, when you sent your first email, I commented that if Rob was behind it, that was a very positive sign. He's been so active in this. So that's an excellent point. We have a motion in a second. We'll vote. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we look forward to the something that Joe we can work on to get out. Let me ask you something. Do we need everyone? Do we need a full board, or should we? Can I sign in as representative of the board?
Take the motion included and have the chairman sign.
Yes, only because it's simpler on this day of pandemic. So.
In other words, we're not going in when we're supposed to sign things.
Okay, we'll go with that then. Thank you all. Thank you for bringing
very much.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you all. Thanks for your time.
Have a good holiday.
You too, Ed, and everyone.
Joe, I'm going to let you go through the items on the agenda on new business.
Larry, if I may.
Michael?
I'm going to move that we vote to authorize the chair to sign the Queen Anne Road, Harwich, Mass. Speed designation. What is it? Here is this. Mass Speed Regulations letter to Massachusetts Department of Transportation.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Kevin, were you here for this discussion or something else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If you did have any questions, I'd be prepared to answer.
Well, for me personally, if anything else, it'd be nice if we just had one speed limit on that road so we could keep track of it.
Yeah, the request was to, right now there's 3, as you know. The request in the letter going out would be make it a little more consistent. So we'd be requesting 35 and then 30. So we'd be going down to 2 rather than the 3, which I think is a good recommendation.
Yeah.
Larry, this was quick for me because we've wrestled with this for years now. And I know last year we had a presentation, I believe it was last year, and a lot of residents spoke about the speeding on Queen Anne Road. So
yeah,
this seems like a no-brainer.
They sure did. If Don, were you?
Yeah, me being right near Ground Central here, I have to say that whatever the speed limit is set at, we really need to enforce it. Because I mean, there are times I can't even get out of my own road. Granted, I'm 1 block east of the roundabout, but the speed limit of the roundabout is 15 miles an hour. And I mean, especially having taught driver's ed, I know 60 is 88 feet a second. The telephone poles are either 50 or 100 feet apart, and you can count that out. These people are going like 45 or 50 miles an hour. So my hope is on that road that we make it more consistent on the speed limit, that we eliminate the confusion part of it for a driver to say, I didn't realize I was on that section or this, because these people are wailing down that road. I mean, and there are tons of people who I see every summer with strollers heading towards Bucks Pond or some other areas on the side of the road with kids. Something bad is really going to happen unless we get that under control.
Thank you, Don. If no other discussion, I'll take a roll call vote. Don, you wish to start this?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's passed. Now moving on to C.
Larry, if I may?
Please.
I move that we approve section 1.07 of the Harwich Board of Selectmen liquor license regulation request for closure by licensed establishment Villa Roma, 278 Route 28.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? I'm an aye. Don?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
That's passed unanimously. D?
I move that we approve annual inholders licenses 1 through 3 as presented in the packet.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll go with roll call. Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that's passed.
I move that we approve annual common viculars licenses 1 through 3 and 5 through 8 as presented in the packet.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? It's probably worthwhile pointing out that I believe, Joe, on embers, we wish to hold that until we resolve some other issues.
But if I may, there's no legal reason to hold up the common vicular. It's going to be held separate from any other license, and renewing the common vicular does not impact upon the other licenses. And I can provide an update on the other licenses if you'd like.
By other licenses, you're talking about the liquor license?
Liquor license and entertainment, correct.
The entertainment license. With that, Michael, do you wish to stay with the same motion?
I do. I would like to stay with the same motion, and then we can bring that up as a separate item when we're done voting on this.
Okay. Is there a second?
I already did.
Ed first and then Don?
I already had.
Fine.
Okay, second. Ed?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Don?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Michael, you wish to bring back then item
So on item four, Ember Pizza, I won't be making the motion, and I think my point really is, and we've been waiting on a hearing, and I don't want to single the business out, and I think as we vote annual liquor licenses and other licenses, these other ones have come up with no violations or alleged violations, and I think as a board, as the licensing authority, we should take it up. Personally, I think we should take it up as one issue, all the licenses. And unless Joe tells us that this is going to impact their being able to be open, then I would say we should take them all up as one unit when they initiate a hearing or we initiate a hearing, either or. But we've been telling the residents for quite some time now that we're going to act. We've got the Noise Containment Committee. We've got several people and several residents very upset about us not acting. And I think that the board needs to have the hearings. And if they're found not guilty in the hearings, then there's no action required and we approve all the licenses right away. If they are, I just think that at some point we need to be serious about this, and entirely too much time has passed. And again, unless this impacts their ability to be open, then I don't see why we wouldn't hold all licenses until a hearing is facilitated.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, John?
It does prevent. I mean, I'm looking at the definition right now from the state site. A common vicular license is issued by the licensing authority. Every food service establishment with the capabilities for cooking, preparing, and serving food, and which provides seating for the immediate consumption therein, is required to have a common vicular's license. They won't be able to serve anybody.
Joe, when's the, you kind of comment on that, and when does this license expire if we don't approve it?
Can you repeat the last part of that, please?
When does the license expire if we hold it tonight?
I think I heard you say, when does the license expire?
That's
Are you
correct.
making reference to the common vicular license?
Yes.
It expires with the end of the calendar year. So if I could explain and build upon what Selectman Howell has said, the common vicular license is handled completely differently than any other license for an establishment, and it's one of the oldest licenses because it gets to the ability to serve food to the general public. So if an establishment, so a liquor license establishment cannot serve liquor without serving food. A entertainment license could not have entertainment for a restaurant without serving food. So the board can take the action of renewing the common vitular. With regard to the license for liquor and entertainment, I've been able to conclude with council as of today that that matter is going to come up before the board on January 4th because we had to finalize a proper motion. So on January 4th, you're going to have the license for renewal for Ember for liquor for the board to approve, subject to the outcome of a future hearing. And then that hearing is the one that we're working on for a future date. So the board could renew the liquor license, putting it out there that the understanding is you're only renewing because you're going to have a hearing regarding the overall license, and the renewal cannot be used against you if you take a hearing. If you deny the common victular tonight or take no action on it, that could trigger a series of actions that are completely distinct from the liquor license and could cause potential hazards on the hearings for the liquor licenses.
And Joe, in the meantime, wouldn't he be precluded from serving food as of January?
Correct.
I get your point, Joe, on the serving food. Why would we approve a liquor license contingent on a hearing? Why wouldn't we hold the liquor license till the hearing's completed?
Well, because council will say that you're denying that. So if the board voted tonight, which you can't because we don't have notice, but if you voted tonight to remand a hearing or have a hearing straight through the board, that license is understood to be renewed pending the outcome of the hearing because they're an existing property owner of that license. It's different than a hearing for a new license. Even though it's a renewal and even though the board has the right to take certain actions, it is assumed that the property owner reserves the right to retain their property pending the outcome. So council felt, and I agree, council felt it appropriate for the board to take a next step, affirmative step of saying, yeah, we recognize that your license is renewed until it's revoked. So we're voting to renew and holding off on any other action and cannot be denied the right of the hearing. So it really,
I don't want to push this forever, Joe, but can, our problem is.
We're not talking about the license tonight, Larry. This is about the common vicular license.
Right, the common vicular license I get. That seems like we have to move ahead on. I'm getting back to the next step on.
Larry?
Come back on the
It's not on the agenda.
Larry?
Yeah.
I move that we approve Ember Pizza Inc., DBA Ember, 600 Route 28's common vicular license.
Second. I think our discussion's over on that. I'll take a roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So
I just want to
we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm still worried about how do we bring this to closure with a liquor license and not. My fear is that we'll bring this back at a later date.
so Mr. Chairman and members, I was prepared to speak about that this evening under TA's report to give a quick update on all of that, separate from common vicular.
Okay.
Larry?
Okay. Ed?
Yeah, the issue on the liquor license, we're holding a hearing on the business for some charges that have been made, but they haven't been, quote, found guilty. And, in our country, you're deemed innocent until found guilty. So if we denied them their liquor license in advance of that hearing, we're basically saying you're guilty because we're penalizing you by not allowing you to continue in your business.
Point of order, this isn't on the agenda.
I know.
Okay, we'll move on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Michael?
That we approve MGL Chapter 138, Section 12, annual on-premise liquor license renewal for Jake Rooney's 119 Brooks Road, annual all alcohol, pending proof of insurance.
Second.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have proof of insurance. It was received today.
Okay, well, that motion's still good in second because we can, that condition's been met. So any other discussion? Take a roll call. I'm an aye. Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to allow the interim town administrator to execute the ITT 72 statewide contract authorized user agreement with Verizon Wireless.
Second.
Discussion? I'll take a roll call. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Anyone care to make a motion on the catch basin cleaner?
Mr. Chair?
Ed?
I'd move that we approve the contract agreement between the town of Harwich and Ballard Mac Sales and Services for the purchase of a granite 42 FR catch basin cleaner for the Department of Public Works in the amount of $214,000.
Is there a second?
What's the funding source again? I'd like to hear that in the motion.
Ed, I think the funding source was last town meeting, but
yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah.
This is maybe a little late on this, but Joe and I don't see anyone here from DPW, but have there been discussion in the past about joining one of our neighboring towns to purchase equipment of this kind?
No, but if it's the will of the board, we can start those discussions.
I would like that because I don't see this as being a full-time need, the catch basin, and maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like something that one or 2 or 3 towns might be able to join together and share this equipment. It's an expensive piece of equipment.
So, Mr. Chairman, I do believe our, I'm going to say the name wrong, but Kyle Edson, our automotive
guru
group, and thank you, Michael. Sorry, automotive guru is on, and he may be able to speak to it if the board wants.
Good, because my emphasis is how frequently it's used. It would be possible to share it. Kyle, you're muted.
Unmute yourself. Kyle?
There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, as far as use for the vehicle is used for cleaning catch basins. It's also used for plowing and sanding. So it is used year round.
And it's used frequently enough that it has to be in play. You could not share that with another town.
That is correct.
Larry?
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, this conversation came up, and I want to say we've actually held this for a year longer than we were going to. I believe Link had moved this from one year to the next because of budget constraints, but I can't swear to that. That was one of my questions, Larry. Thank you for asking it, because I do think in these times, and given what we looked at tonight, or briefly looked at tonight, that we really need to start thinking about what we need and what we want, and what we can share with other towns. In this case, I think Kyle just said that this is one of our primary plow vehicles. So, maybe we hold this and just really get Link's take on whether or not we absolutely need this, or if we could get away with a less expensive truck and do some sharing. I think I'd be inclined to support it based on the fact that it is also a plow and sanding truck. My other reason for not making this motion is, again, I'm going to point out that the checklist is not in the packet. And I would ask that one of the other 4 board members that voted positive, because it was a 5-0 vote with a procurement process, that one of the other 4 of you make a motion to reconsider and take that policy off the table. Because it's embarrassing to me that we've laid out this process, yet we don't follow it. And tonight in the packet, the recommendation comes from our engineer, who by all accounts is on our procurement team, but it came by our engineer. There was no written memo in the packet that I can see from Joe, but more important, the checklist that you all acknowledged last week that we would start following, we still aren't following. So now I've gone now 3 weeks out of my way to point out things that are wrong, and clearly I'm being ignored, but the whole board's being ignored. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. And so I would just assume get rid of the policy, have a free-for-all, and I'll just vote no on all of them. Or we do it the way we said we were going to do it.
I'm not willing to give up the policy yet. Joe, I think you have some questions.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, there were no procurements scheduled to come before the board this evening for that very reason. Staff have been working on a number of them, and we sought guidance from the chair. These were identified by staff to be critical items that if we did not procure them by this evening, in this particular case, it's my understanding that the price quote expires and is expected to exceed it by an additional $20,000, if I recall correctly. It was not my intention to have any procurements come before the board this evening for that very reason, which quite frankly is why I relied upon advice and direction from chair.
Yeah, Michael, just to clarify what Joe said, when it came to me, I said this was absolutely necessary. Don't bring it forward without the checklist that we agreed to.
Larry, I appreciate now that Joe, this is off of Joe, but as far as you go and Joe goes, we're getting into a position, and I can't put my finger on the meeting, but 3 contracts came before us not long ago with the same not the same, but close to the same, and I'll call it excuse that there wasn't enough time to do something and we were running out of time. Everything is not an emergency, and these things should be done in a timely fashion so the board isn't voting on something outside of their policy that they created 5-0. And that doesn't fall on Joe, because the board has the ability to deny them. That falls on the board for continuously passing things that are put before us that aren't complete. And you know, y'all may not be embarrassed, but I am.
Can I say something, Larry?
Sure can.
I've really wrestled with this myself. I'll be honest with you, the sheet itself was more indicative of the procurement, the underlying procurement data, and I had no faith, no trust, no belief in the prior administration. They were constantly saying things were there that weren't there, or fibbing here and there about stuff. The checklist, I'm pretty satisfied. I mean, we have to discuss this. Michael's right. We passed something. We got to unpass it if that's what we want to do. But the information, not dealing with tonight's, but I went back over the last one that we had that discussion over. All of the checklist information is contained in that packet. It's just not on that list that we had said. The list meant something to me when it was something that no one was following. When we were constantly short of information, that there was no signed off by our finance director, there was no commenting from legal counsel. I mean, that stuff is there. It's just not on a checklist.
And then Larry, if I may.
Sure.
My argument to Don's argument, and Don, I completely agree with you. Things are a lot more complete than they were, and hidden someplace in the 365-page packets that we get is all of that information. And the checklist that we all agreed on back when Evan made it and Chris brought it forward for the reasons that you said is a very simple way to have a cover sheet along with a letter from the chief procurement officer telling the board that all of this stuff is in this packet and that it was recommended by the town administrator / chief procurement officer. So it's a very simple check sheet that shows what's in the packet if anyone ever audits us. And it also shows that the chief procurement officer acknowledges it. So, and I am 100% fine if the board votes to undo the policy. But if we're going to have a policy, we should follow that policy. And for me, Don, it's not about who's doing it, because it is being done a lot better. And I feel a lot better about it. But it's a very simple way to look at a packet and look at something that you want to without reading the 360 plus pages that are before us every week.
Larry, hearing that, can you put on the agenda a specific discussion that has nothing to do with any one contract, but just has to do with this policy?
Sure. We can do that.
I mean, we've trapped ourselves into this. Michael's right. We voted for it. Whether or not it's still pertinent is another issue that I want to litigate tonight. I mean, the fact of the matter is we need to have an agenda item. If we want to eliminate the use of that, we can have that discussion.
No, I agree, because if it's the policy, we need to stick to it. I agree with you, Michael, on that. We come back with this. Joe, can we add that to the agenda? We'll clarify.
Sure. May I speak for a moment, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I don't, the board adopted the procurement policy that I presented several months ago that I spent several meetings going through, and it included the procurement, let me get the title correct, the procurement checklist and approval form that you see in your packets every time there's a procurement. And I explained that evening that that format covers all of the requirements under the law, takes all of the best elements from the prior checklist that was no longer valid or binding, and it allows us in procurement to then streamline it into a database to track everything on an ongoing basis. It was meant to be a higher standard of procurement, and it was a procurement process that I rolled out to the board for discussion, but the board took the unique and I thought helpful process of making a motion to endorse the process. And that document was included. I don't want to fight about this, but I do want to make it clear that if I go back over the records of your meetings over the last several months, this was part and parcel of what I was recommending. The procurement checklist and approval form is a PDF form that goes out to all procurers, and it has a drop-down menu of all of the potential procurement methods they could use, but you can only use one at a time. So I can refine it in any way, shape, or form, but the board endorsed it, and that's where my confusion lies. But again, I feel very uncomfortable having this discussion this evening because I wanted to avoid this very discussion and rancor, because I didn't want to have this devolve into what it is. But I have to put out there for the record that I sought advice and guidance. And so these two items, there were at least 5 items that were asked to come before you tonight. And I directed staff to find out what were the most critical. And the Verizon wireless, because the plan ends, and that's something that I just received about 10 days ago myself. And this catch basin cleaner goes back to Article 16 from the 2019 annual town meeting. And we've worked on it for quite some time. And I will ask, and I hate to do it in this manner, but I would rely upon either Kyle or Griffin to explain to the board what the net effect will be if you don't approve this procurement tonight. Because it's my understanding that the price of the catch basin cleaner is going to go to such a level that we no longer have appropriation at that level. That may be the intent of the board, but I want you to be able to make an informed decision in that regard. But that's the only reason why these 2 items came before you this evening, because they were determined to be critical by staff, and I wanted to at least give the board the opportunity to have a discussion on the legitimacy of the procurement. I welcome the board revisiting the procurement process, and I will do as the board votes. But to be fair, you adopted a policy several months ago that included the document that you see in your packet.
Mr. Chair, this is on us. And that's why I'd like to have an agenda discussion on it, because if it needs to happen, we need to rescind the first policy in favor of the second. We never even had that discussion. That's us. That's not the corner off.
Yeah, I think we should bring it back and clarify. Joe and everyone, I think we're talking cross purposes a little bit. My understanding was that we liked your procurement policy. We agreed to that. I think what we wish to have on overlaid on top of that was a so-called checklist, which is basically a summary of the procurement, that all the different aspects have been checked off, have been done, to make it easy to as a final check, and not a separate effort, and not separate from the policy itself. Am I missing something?
No, I'm willing to second this contract right now, and then we can have the broader discussion before we start rolling out any other contracts.
And I agree, Larry, but I would say, and I'd like an opportunity to respond to Joe, and I would take him up on his offer to go through the last few months' meetings, because the motion, I believe I made it, was to accept the procurement process with the addition of a checklist. When Joe then had some confusion about what checklist I was talking about, we brought it up again at the last meeting, and we actually referenced now 2 meetings. I referenced Evan's checklist, and the whole board agreed with that. The whole board agreed at the last time we talked about the simple checklist. So it's not just me bringing that up. And again, the motion that was made on Joe's procurement process was to include the checklist. I'll give it that there may be some confusion on what type of checklist, but there was no confusion after the last meeting, because Don, I think you and I, we went back and forth on this a little bit, but agreed that that was a simple checklist. Joe then said that he said that it was overburdening to the procurement team. And I asked and said that I would concede on that if he could demonstrate that that form was overburdening to the procurement team. So that's where the conversation went, and that's what we'll have for a debate. But I would take him up on the offer to go back and look at the past few months, because it's not as simple as he just laid it out to us.
I think Don's made a good suggestion. Let's bring this back, Joel, just to clarify, because we got to get off this subject.
Let's just focus on this one contract, which I will now, I will leave a second it.
Yeah, but we have a motion and a second on this contract. Is there other discussion? Joe, I would take you up on your offer to just double check if there's any opportunity to share that with other towns.
Understood.
If there's no other discussion, I'll take a roll call. Don?
Aye.
Michael?
No.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So 3-1. Next on the agenda is the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm pleased to announce that I have completed the internal search and started and stopped with Ms. Delaney. And I'm pleased to say that she has accepted the town's offer to be the official executive assistant for licensing and administration.
Thank you. And thank Danelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report, other than to say to you all, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And just as a reminder, we're not meeting next Monday. We'll meet then the first Monday in January. So I agree. Each of you have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Be safe.
Larry?
Yes, Michael.
Just back to Joe's town administrator. Joe, you had mentioned that you were going to tell us about license hearings.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. So as I mentioned earlier, in conversation with council now, you may recall that there's two separate things that are being discussed with regard to hearing. The hearing related to the pandemic, the alleged pandemic violations that we started over the summertime and had a number of roadblocks as to why that was completed, is going to be noticed and sent out to all required parties. So this is restarting the issue that you had remanded to me as hearing officer related to alleged violations as identified by ABCC inspectors. And so that is scheduled to come up in January. I'm hesitating on giving the particulars only because we're trying to finalize everybody. The notice is expected to be published next week with notice sent to the applicant first. Council suggested that rather than get into a back and forth, that once council for the licensee is made aware, we will then publish the hearing notice. Again, this is scheduled to be published next Monday. Once that's all confirmed, I will alert the board first and foremost. I can't say continuation because we're doing it from scratch for a number of reasons as it relates to the alleged violations that were brought forward by the ABCC. Separately, where the board had indicated that there was an intent perhaps to look into not renewing the license separate from the other hearings, that's the matter that I spoke of before. So to accomplish that, council is recommending that at your next meeting on January 4th, the application for renewal come before the board. The board can, and I'll have the motion language ready for you. The motion would indicate that if it passed, the board was looking to renew the license, however, reserving the right to return to that pending any future hearing that may be held. And what that's saying is council is saying that you're allowed to say to them, listen, there's been a lot going on. The board is going to say, yep, we've got your license. We will renew it, but we will not be deprived of the right to do hearings. Now, council believes that that is an appropriate action to take to try and survive any legal action that's interjected before any hearings occur, and I would agree. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but the board still has the ability, if you want, to determine on January 4th, if you wish to have a hearing to the validity of renewing the license, separate from any other license hearings that may be occurring.
Joe, thank you for that. Just for clarification, we could actually do that with any license, any of the licensee, right? Without this motion, we can revoke their license if they violate.
Well, not necessarily, no, because when it's one of the potential penalties that could come out of a license hearing, such as the one that's going to be restarted from the summer, could be a recommendation of revocation. So you could do that related to alleged violations. The second one that I'm talking about is the board has the right, upon being presented with a renewal application, to say that you would consider doing a hearing for the purposes of not renewing. And when you do that, you've got a different set of standards called the Ballerin factors that you have to weigh in on. You don't have to have alleged violations per se, but you do have an obligation, as counsel was writing previously, to meet certain standards that have been tested by court cases. The confusion for me comes in that we've got an existing hearing that we've been endeavoring through pandemic and other roadblocks to finish up. Regardless of the outcome of that, the board still reserves the right to say to any licensee seeking renewal, before you renew, you're going to seek a hearing. You can't simply say we're not going to renew. So that motion to be presented on January 4th is meant to be a protective motion on behalf of and support of the town. That you're giving notice that, yep, your license is going to continue on, which it would anyway, even if you had a hearing revocation, a renewal revocation hearing. Because unless and until it goes through the appeal process, the courts have always said that a licensee that has a license can consider that to be essentially part of property that they have the right to. And so this board could decide on January 4th to have a hearing relative to renewal, including not renewing, give ample notice and talk about the community at large. If the board as a local licensing authority, as an example, determined that you did not want to renew, then the applicant has the right of immediate appeal to the ABCC. And that could go on for a few months, and before that finalizes, they have the right to operate. And that's been borne out by case law.
Joe, just one follow-up.
Sure.
You've mentioned I'm probably mispronouncing it, but the Ballerin clause?
Ballerin factors, yep.
And the motion on the 4th will allow us, if we need to, sometime in the future, bring that into play?
Correct.
And if that's so, could you explain what those factors are?
Sure, yeah, and it's BALLARIN, and I believe the case was Ballerin versus City of Boston. And the courts essentially ruled that while a local licensing authority has the right to deny a renewal, there are certain standards that you have to apply. And so they talked about different standards that could be noise, reputation of the manager, the type of application to be used, and they come to altogether 8. Now, there's no magic number that you have to find a renewal license to be in violation or to not meeting the spirit of the 8 factors. In fact, there is no numerical test under the case law. But what a licensing authority would have to say is that you feel that certain Ballerin factors were not found to be in favor of the renewal applicant. And it could be the type of operation they run, the views of the community, proximity to a religious institution. And if you had 2 or 3 of those, and by conducting your hearing, a member would say, I would move that the establishment does not meet the responsibility under Ballerin factor number X, which is noise. They've demonstrated excessive noise. Another member could say, I would move that they do not meet the Ballerin factor of reputation of the manager. These are all hypotheticals, but the point is you would go through a series of sub-motions that would support the motion to not renew. And that's important because that's the only thing that the ABCC can really weigh in on for a local licensing authority. The ABCC and the courts have upheld that while establishments have the right to have these licenses, if so issued, the municipalities still have the right to revoke, but you have to do so in a cogent and coherent manner. And they would be looking for, did you give ample notice? Did you make a statement relative to a factor? And did you find that that factor was not being met? And then, quite frankly, the ABCC is sort of bound to say that either the local licensing authority handled the hearing in an appropriate manner, or you did not, and then render their decision. If the ABCC backs up your decision, it then goes to a court, and what the courts typically look at is, did the ABCC appropriately evaluate whether the local licensing authority did things properly?
Thank you, Joe.
And I only have one question, Joe, and I believe you answered it, and it goes to what I asked the past few weeks when we made these motions. Is the business okay from January 1st till January 4th if the board doesn't vote their liquor license tonight or prior to? I want to make sure that they're able to serve alcohol and that they'll be fine. We're not trying to punish them for alleged violations.
That's absolutely correct. And that's why council has suggested that when it comes up on the 4th, that you say that it's understood to be renewed, but the board reserves the right to do hearings.
Thank you.
And vacate that, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Move to the selectmen's reports.
Larry?
Ed, sure.
Just one question, Joe. The license in question, it's a seasonal license?
No, Ember, their annual is wine and malt. Their seasonal, is all alcohol.
Okay, then if their seasonal license, if I'm correct, runs from April 1st to January 15th.
That's correct.
So their current license will still be in effect to cover the 1st through 4th.
That's correct. Period. That's correct. And it is also correct that the board could consider all manner of licenses if you wanted to conduct a hearing. You're not precluded from waiting until sometime on the seasonal.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move then to selectmen's reports. Don?
I'm just going to echo what Larry and Joe said. And actually, I'm offering it to everybody. Not only a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, a better one than this year. And Happy Hanukkah to my friends who are Jewish. But I extend that to the board as well as to all of the volunteers and the staff in the town. It's been a tough year. Let's hope for a better one.
Yeah, it has to be better. Michael?
I would just echo all three of you. Merry Christmas to all and happy holidays.
Ed?
And the same.
Okay. Good night, all.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. You're going to make me take a roll call, aren't you?
Well, you can't stop the meeting without it.
Don?
Aye.
Ed, Michael?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And Joe, you don't get to vote, but thanks anyway.
Thank you. Take care. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, same to you.
Good night.
And Noreen, good night to you.
Wake up, Noreen.